My phone woke me up at 4:40 Christmas Eve morning of 2011. It was the Greensboro Police Department. The detective identified himself and asked me if I was alone, and I told him I was. He asked me if I could get somebody to be with me, and I said, no, I'm fine, and anticipating he had some very bad news for me. He gave me the news that no parent ever wants to receive. My 28-year-old son had been found dead in an apparent home invasion. I had no emotion at that time. In fact, I said to the detective, "Can you hang on a second? Let me get a pen and paper. I can write this down." No emotion. That would come later. And he shared with me the facts that he could share. I realized at that time that I was not still dreaming. This was a nightmare like I had never experienced before. It wasn't until I was on the phone with a friend a couple of hours later that I broke down. I lost it. This became very hard and just seemed totally unnecessary. Weeks earlier, I had dinner with this friend, the same friend. And over dinner, we were talking about issues and hypotheticals. And I mentioned to him, I asked him the question, what would you do if one of your children were murdered? How would you respond to that? And he told me, and I thought for a moment, and I said, as a follower of Jesus, I don't really have any choice. I would have to forgive the murderer. We completed that conversation by saying, may God forbid that either one of us ever have to find out. Years ago, I was caught up in sinful, shameful activity in my life, and after a time, I repented, and I asked for forgiveness from God, my Father, and forgiveness from others that I had also offended. As much as God's forgiveness meant to me, it was the forgiveness of others that was incredible. It was a tangible evidence of God's ability to change other people's hearts. And it was incredibly wonderful. When it came time to process the desires of my heart toward the man who had murdered my son, I came to two realizations. One was my son was not coming back. And any feeling of hatred or harm that I might want to his murderer was really going to do nothing but bring me harm. And number two, this young man that took my son's life, his soul has value just as my life has value. I wanted this guy to experience the same love and forgiveness from God that I had experienced. And I realized that this had to start with me. Today I correspond with this man in prison, and I encourage him in Jesus just as I would want people to encourage me. The pain of the loss of my son is still very real. It's very horrendous, and furthers the reality for me that we are not home yet. It is my prayer for this young man in prison that he will experience God's love and forgiveness. And the thought of him coming into a relationship with Jesus makes me smile.